My name is Jamin Gurker. I'm an associate real estate broker in the state of Alaska. My mission, as always, is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching in real estate. And today we're going to be talking about why everyone is leaving Alaska. Now, obviously, that's a statistical impossibility for everyone to be living in Alaska. Everyone would have to already be living here. But we're going to be talking about why it is the people who are leaving, why it is that they are leaving. Okay, if that makes any sense. So we'll be jumping into that in just a minute. Before we get started, though, do make sure you like, subscribe, do all the good stuff that blesses this channel. And without further ado, let's jump into it. Now, the first thing I'm going to give you is really going to be one of the biggest reasons that there are for why people decide to leave Alaska, and that is that there are just not as many job opportunities for career advancement. I'm going to do a separate video talking about the 10-year projection into the future as far as job opportunities go, and there's going to be an indication that, oh wow, there's all these jobs being offered up here, when in reality, not a whole lot of them really offer a whole lot of upward mobility for a lot of folks that are already established. A lot of them are going to be entry-level positions. Not a whole lot of them are going to be kind of that middle management or upper level CEO or other opportunities on the upper level of companies that most people are looking for when they're considering career advancement. So for that reason, yeah, definitely there's just not as many job opportunities up here in Alaska as what you're going to find in the lower 48. And a lot of people, when they're kind of forced to decide between staying in Alaska indefinitely or going somewhere else, working for a bit, and then coming back and retiring, a lot of people kind of opt to go for option B. Now, the second reason that people decide to leave Alaska is that there is definitely a shrinking PFD, or Permanent Fund Dividend, known in the longhand. Now, what the Permanent Fund Dividend is this is actually a share of the revenue gained from the oil that is produced in the state. And this has been something that Alaskans have really had from day one, where they share a portion of whatever the revenue is for the resources for the state as far as oil goes. And it's been good. You know, it's been something that has really been a good support for a lot of folks. You get a share per person in your household. And usually, I mean, days gone by, I think the most it ever was maybe somewhere around like 5,000. Fact check me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but I definitely do remember PFDs. There were about $3,000 per person in your household. If you have a large family, you can definitely see how that would make a pretty big impact. Now, the PFD has just been shrinking more and more and more and more in recent years. And a lot of this has to do with over-the-top, out-of-control government spending and a lot of special interest groups in Juneau that are paying off a lot of the people to help to get them elected. And so they've started to look more and more to the Permanent Fund Dividend as a slush fund to help them pay for these fees. Now, what's going to happen eventually is they're probably going to take the Permanent Fund Dividend for all it's worth, and then they'll start going for income tax and a bunch of other taxes as well. So that's why it's important to really stay on top of what's going on with the Permanent Fund Dividend, because it does kind of serve as a bulwark against a lot of these other taxes that would really harm this state and the citizens who live here. But got a little bit on a rabbit trail there. Big thing is, yes, one of the reasons that some people are leaving is they were kind of close to the edge to begin with, and once you start taking the resource of the Permanent Fund Dividend out of the equation or really start cutting it back, living in Alaska starts to become pretty untenable for them. All right, number 3, and this is going to be something I kind of alluded to in the previous point, but that is an increase in the taxes for the state. Now, there's not an income tax, there's not a statewide sales tax, there's not a whole lot of different types of taxes. Most of our taxes for running the government comes off of sales taxes and from taxing businesses in the area. Now, this is something that's been kind of ongoing, but the property taxes are pretty high, and yes, everyone does pay for them, even if you are renting, because guess what? Your property taxes go up, then guess what? Your rent just went up as well. That's how that works. The landlord's just not going to eat that for you. And the fear is that moving forward, Juneau is just becoming more and more and more bloated with a lot of paying off special interest groups and a lot of people that are invested and certain people to get elected. And once they get elected, they show up and say, hey, gimme. And what you're seeing is that a lot of the state is kind of moving towards paying off a lot of these people and these special interest groups, and that is going to result in more and more bloat that is going to result in having to increase the taxes. And of course, they'll dress it up and make it sound good, but the bottom line is taxes are going to go up. There's going to be very likely a lot of new taxes and a lot of new types of taxes, in addition to the permanent fund dividend going away when they can't help themselves, and they just help themselves to all of this slush fund, as they call it. All right, let's go and move on from politics a little bit here. Another big reason that people decide to move from Alaska, and this is going to be kind of obvious, but it's really just that the winters are harsh here, and they start taking a toll on your soul itself after a while. Believe me, you wake up so many mornings and it's like 0 or -10 or something like that. Eventually, that does start to kind of take its toll when you have to go outside, just like rushing from point A to point B, and like the air is so cold it's like hurting your skin. Eventually that kind of starts to take its toll. And yes, the summers are absolutely beautiful, and unfortunately the summers don't last long enough. So for that reason, the effects of the winter just are felt that much more. Point number next is the amount of crime that is happening in this state is on the uptick. Now, you can take a look at the crime maps and get a sense for where probably most of the heavy lifting for the crime is happening in the entire state. But the fact of the matter is that yes, crime is going up for the state. And the fact of the matter is there's a lot of crime that goes unreported just because people get so tired of reporting stuff and nothing ever happening. And so they just give up reporting altogether. So you'll look at the crime maps and you'll see certain areas that look pretty bad. Do keep in mind though that that's probably not all the crime that's going on there. The issue is that our cops are running into is that we have a legal system that is way too lenient to the perpetrators, and as a result, they get frustrated with having to catch the same people over and over and over just for them to get released back into the street. And that's obviously taking its toll on the cops, the legal system, everything here. And the reality is that if you are living here, you're also very likely going to be experiencing at least some negative consequence of that. Maybe not necessarily become a victim yourself personally, but you are for sure going to be experiencing the downside of it, just as the overall quality of life in the area goes down as these people continue to almost be able to do whatever they want with impunity or hardly any consequences, just because our legal system is just way too lenient. Let's go and take a break real quick here. If you've been watching for a little bit now, you do know that I do have a podcast called the Alaskan Journey Podcast. The link for that is going to be in the description section down below. But in that podcast, I interview people who have recently moved up here or have lived here for years and talk about what it is they like about the state, what it is they don't like about the state, and talk about some of those ins and out things that you're probably considering if you're considering moving up here. So if that's something that would benefit you, do make sure you go check that out. And let's go and finish up today's video. Unrealized expectations is going to be the next thing that really kind of turns people off and makes them decide to move out of the state altogether. Now, what I mean by this is when people are considering moving to Alaska, they watch a lot of YouTube channels, TV, documentaries, stuff like that, and you really get a picture of Alaska that's based on, I'm going to say, fantasy, really. It's usually just not very realistic at all, just kind of this off-grid lifestyle where everyone's living in some homestead, some kind of a homestead situation, and that is just not the norm up here at all. But people move up here, that's their expectations, and then they start realizing, oh shoot, I'm just in some town in the Midwest really with better views. And that's really kind of the norm that most people are going to experience up here. Obviously, you can more easily go live kind of this self-sustaining lifestyle if that's what you want to do. Homesteading as a legal term just does not exist, has not existed here for decades, but you can still go live some self-sustaining lifestyle somewhere if that's really what you want to do, but it's definitely not the norm. The next reason that a lot of people decide to move from Alaska is pretty simple, and that is being physically far removed from friends and family. You know, it's no secret that Alaska is really distant from the continental the United States. And that really is something you start feeling after the first couple weeks, first couple months, where you start thinking, hey, I'd like to go visit so-and-so. And it's like, oh yeah, I am thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away. And at this point, it's going to be either a really long flight or it's going to be probably a week or so of driving through the wilderness in order to get to them. And after a while, you really start feeling like you live on an island or in a different country altogether. Here in Alaska, and for some people, if they really being close to friends and family is important to them, that's going to be something that they're really going to feel. So, if find yourself in that boat, just kind of know who you are. All right, I think I'm probably going to catch some heat from some people for saying this, but another reason that people decide to leave Alaska is that Alaska ranks pretty bad as far as education goes. Now, of course, you're going to find exceptions anywhere you go. And the reality is that if you are someone who takes advantage of all the opportunities that you've been given, you're going to excel regardless where you're coming from. But as a whole, Alaska ranks 46th out of all the states for reading and math, according to the Heritage Foundation. Now, it's you can look at a bunch of different metrics and scales and all that to gauge how Alaska's doing, and the results are pretty much going to come up to being about the same. The reality is that Alaska just really struggles with figuring out its education, and a big part of that has to do with the fact that a lot of our local politicians really just think throwing more money at the problem is what we need to do, and that is there's a lot more systemic problems at its core than just throwing more money at it, because and that can be seen by the fact that we spend more per student than just about any other state, and yet our results are way down there on the floor. So it's not great. And if education is something that is really important to you, then that is something where if you have students that you're really going to be thinking twice before deciding to live in Alaska long term. Now, that being said, it's very supportive of charter schools, very supportive of homeschooling and other options like that. So just because the education public system up here, might not rank very well compared to everyone else, does not necessarily mean you're going to have a terrible education if you do move up here to Alaska, but it is something for you to be aware of nonetheless. Last but not least, another reason that people decide to leave Alaska is, this one's a bit of a, this one kind of feels like I'm going off topic a little bit just to get some other swipe here at a local institution, but our local University of Alaska, Anchorage, specifically here in South Central Alaska, it's really not much to brag about. I remember when I got here, I think it was about 8 years ago, I was looking at just getting my teacher certification, finishing that up because I already had most of that already done at another school that I had a very, very highly ranked school and program for education, but UAA just said, no, we can't accept any of these classes. They're not up to our standards. It's like, what are you talking about? And then by the way, UAA almost lost its accreditation just like a year or so later. So straight hot mess, and we just don't get much of a bump from the local college thing. I really wish that was different. I wish it was a small school that was run really well and really efficient, with incredible results to show for all the time and effort and resources. And unfortunately, that's just not what we're seeing. That's just kind of is what it is. So what does all this mean for you? Well, it means if you are considering moving to Alaska, it means that you should take a look at these negatives and really get a sense as to whether or not these are going to be big turnoffs for you or not. And, for some people, Alaska is just kind of it's a phase where, hey, I want to get here. This has always been a dream of mine. I don't know if I'm going to be here for 30, 40 years. I don't know if I'm going to be a full-timer for the rest of my life, but this is at least something that I want to do just to have the experience, and that's perfectly fine. Other people, if you want this to be your long-term place where you end up living here forever, these are things that you do need to grapple with and decide if these are going to be important to you or not. And if these are going to be showstoppers, then that's just something I want you to walk into it with your eyes open. So that's all I got today. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I do want to work with you as your real estate agent if you decide to purchase something up here. And see you next time.